Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's Belonging series, exploring the BAME experience from Imperial as one. It's a series of candid interviews which we host with prominent Black individuals and ethnic minority individuals within the community. And this week we've got the pleasure of having Professor Washington Ochieng, who will be with us this afternoon. And he is the co-director of the Institute of Security, Science and Technology at Imperial College. It's a real privilege to have Washington here with us today. And I know he's got a very fascinating story, which I'm hoping he's going to share with us this afternoon. So, Washington, I'm going to kick off, as is my usual, by asking the question of, can you give us a little bit of an idea about what it is that inspired you, a bit about your early life, and what it is that's inspired you throughout your career?
Thank you very much, Wayne, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from where you're joining from God's planet. So my story goes back, to a little village in Kenya, many years ago now, where I was born and raised before doing the usual thing that Kenyans tended to do at that time, where we went to a few cities that had the schools that we could go to for high school, and then proceeded to the one university that they had, University of Nairobi, to do my engineering degree. Now, I did study civil engineering with a surveying background when I was there. But actually, what transpired after that was very much something that occurred when I was about 12. And I remember talking to my mother at night in our village. Our home then used to be on the flight path from Nairobi to London. And so there used to be these aircraft, two of them, I think one going to London, maybe one going to Switzerland, that used to pass at 8 p.m. and 8:30 respectively. So you used to see little dots of light. And I remember saying to my mother that I wanted to be in one of those one day. I didn't know where to, but anyway, just to be in it. And I remember my mom saying, well, you're not just going to be in it, but you're going to make one. So I got really fascinated by space and aviation also. And so when I finished my undergraduate degree at the University of Nairobi, I basically sought to get a scholarship to come to the UK to do that. So, my inspiration there was my mother, interestingly enough.
Because so she was the one who gave you the idea. You knew you wanted to go in a plane, but she was telling you don't just be in the plane, make the plane.
Yeah, she said, you're not just going to be in it, but you're going to make it as well, which is what I ended up doing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you said that you grew up in the village in Kenya. And so what were some of the early influences which you had, which helped you to have that kind of like ambition to go to university, go to college? What was it that inspired you to do those things?
Yeah, I mean, many of the typical cases, in those days were very much pegged on poverty.
Right.
So there was a lot of that around you. And so some of the young ones that really did get that, we tried very hard. And the only way we knew that we could avoid that was to go to school. So that was quite an important element of it. But there was also the familial side in terms of how, we were modeled and shaped by our parents, which I think is also a critical factor, particularly in those formative years, in terms of how people actually get on after that. So I think it was a combination of the circumstances, mainly associated with poverty, but also the discipline and the kind of general instilling of, the fact that when one person succeeds, that actually the whole village succeeds, and the whole province succeeds, and the whole country succeeds. That's why it is very important to look at individuals as potential contributors to the welfare and well-being of society as a whole.
I like that idea that you've introduced about the collective success. So the success which you had, it isn't just about your individual success, but it was seen as a success for the village, for the family, for the village, and ultimately for a much wider community. Yeah.
Yeah, and you should be there for the fun fairs and celebrations that they have. It's quite an interesting phenomenon, I think. Yeah.
So you then said that after doing your civil engineering degree at the University of Nairobi, you then came to the UK. Okay, what was it that you applied for a fellowship? Was it to come to the UK? What was it why the UK?
That's an interesting story. Now, I made 100 applications at that time, 100, and my sister has the records to prove it. And you talk about London, or you ask about London. I applied to the University of Tasmania.
Tasmania, okay.
Yeah, at Hobart. Now, what was I going to do there? Anyway, I think I ended up in the right place out of the 100 potential destinations. Yeah, but I think the point really was that there was conviction. I wanted it so badly. So I stuck at it. It was my own initiative to write those applications. Some of them were sent to general admissions tutors. Some of them were directed at specific professors, individuals.
Yeah.
And like my sister used to say, don't worry, you do 100, but you only need one. Right. I kind of prayed it wasn't Tasmania, and it wasn't. So Professor Ashkenazi responded from the University of Nottingham, saying that I'm aware of the University of Nairobi and the students there are very good. And the next thing I saw was a scholarship, which was an ODA, Overseas Development Agency shared scholarship. So the government paid some, and the University of Nottingham paid some. That's how I got to the University of Nottingham. Right. Many, many thanks to Professor Ashkenazi.
Right. So it's interesting that you should say that, because one of the comments which you just mentioned was that he said, I know of Nairobi, and I know that the students there are very good. Yeah. Right. Because sometimes I think there's a perception that if they're coming from a place which isn't America or isn't a European, that they're not going to be as good as elsewhere. So it was really
it's very interesting you say that, but my experience actually then and over the years, particularly in the former kind of Anglo side of the world, the syllabus or the curriculum that the universities adopted was such that, at least when I came to Nottingham to do a master's degree, for me it was just revision, because I had been taught all of those things back in Kenya.
Right.
And Professor Ashkenazi knew that. So that was one of the reasons, I think, at least from his perspective, that he thought it wise to give me a chance to come over here.
Yeah, yeah.
But they tend to be, our young ones, even the ones that have come to Imperial to study, for their masters and so on, they tend to do very, very well, actually.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like Professor Ashkenazi was very supportive of you coming, helped to pave the way in terms of helping to find the fellowship, the funding available. So what was it then, coming to the UK? How was that transition from being in a predominantly Black society to being in a predominantly white society? Was there anything was there anything that stood out for you in your memory of back then?
Yeah, I think I would like to make two comments on that. One is that to some extent, or to a large extent, it depends on the age at which you transit, basically, you move.
Yeah.
So I came in my very early 20s.
Right.
and that would be different to me. I think if you were younger. So
Right.
I just want to make sure that colleagues understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But there is also something to say about, as I said already, the formative years of a young
Mm-hmm.
person growing up. So
Mm-hmm.
we had our problems in Kenya to do with tribalism,
Mm-hmm.
for example. But it wasn't actually based on inferiority. It was based mainly on, how to share resources. So
Mm-hmm.
the political system is like that. If your tribe's person is president, then at least then it was, as they used to say, that your turn to eat.
Yeah.
The pie,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So but it wasn't based on inferiority, as in
Mm-hmm.
one tribe is inferior to the other. That's different, obviously, from some of the experiences that people go through in Western countries, for example.
Mm.
So I came in with that kind of sense of belonging, if you like,
Yeah.
in that kind of environment. And the fact that I came in slightly older,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing also very quickly that I knew a lot more than my other colleagues did,
Mm-hmm.
made me effectively feel special to an extent,
Fantastic.
which was quite interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, the kinds of deliberations, discussions we were having, I was very much at the center of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I think they also, colleagues stopped seeing difference in that respect, because of the kind of help or assistance I was able to give. So I think circumstances conspired overall positively for me in that
Yeah.
particular case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you always envisage that you would be an academic as such, and stay in academia? Because civil engineering has so many options in industry and elsewhere. What was it that then helped you to think, I like the academic route?
I had two. I had one. I still have just one aim in life, really.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the familial things that we're concerned about, which is to be societal. I
Right.
am a very societal person,
Yeah.
and so I get my fulfillment from serving society.
Mm-hmm.
From the individual to the whole society, if I can.
Yeah.
And so that has actually been the motivator for a lot of things that I've done. I've actually been in industry for quite a bit,
Yeah.
where I was involved in designing space infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
like your sat nav, GPS, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been obviously in academia.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the reasons why I selected academia, and I call it teaching, by the way, I know I do research, but teaching, is that if I wasn't a zillionaire,
Mm-hmm.
where I would actually dish out money and help people, the next best thing for me was to teach people.
Okay.
So I didn't make the money, and I thought, well, I don't have the money. Let's go into teaching. And I feel that, just like doctors, the nurses we talk about and so on. I mean, everybody remembers their first teacher.
Yeah.
And as I always say, we get students at the university when they're already, ready, basically. But the people who do a lot of the work are the kindergarten teachers, the primary school teachers, and so on. And I don't think that there is a greater calling for an individual than to be able to impact, something that stays with people for the rest of their lives. So I think, I mean, I get a lot of fulfillment from doing that. In addition to philanthropy, I'm very much involved in a lot of charitable work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's societal first, and then figuring out the best way. As I said, I thought I would make lots of money and do that. I didn't. And so this is my next best thing.
So you didn't get the financial gains as such, but you're satisfied by the societal impact that you're
And
achieving.
I'm very, very happy. I mean, I travel around the world now, thanks to my ex-students. In some of the countries, I get the red carpet rolled out at the airport, limousine, and all of that by my ex-students. And so another advice to my colleagues is treat your students well, because they will remember you. They will remember you one day.
I like that advice. I really like that advice. And any teachers who are listening in on this, remember, treat your students well. It will come back. It will come
You'll
back
pay.
to you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Brilliant. So what about your journey to Imperial College then? Because you said you did a couple of stints in industry, but you enjoyed teaching. What about your journey here at Imperial College?
So I was sitting in a space laboratory in Toulouse, in France,
Yeah.
where I was working on the European Space Agency's space-based platforms, and I saw an advert which was really to come in as a lecturer.
Yeah.
And the job was advertised as surveying, you know, the people who do the mapping and
Right.
so
Yeah.
on, which is actually quite a practical subject. I mean, I don't think you need PhDs and so on to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, with this ambition of going back to teaching and the academic environment, I looked at that and I thought, you know, this could be an opportunity to get back in. And Imperial obviously is a world-leading university.
Yeah.
But I really had to think about how I was going to make myself relevant in the long term. I don't think I would do that with a mapping title. And so my interest in doing everything from space is something that I came in here and sold to Professor Tony Ridley and his group at the time, who was heading the department. And they quite liked it. And as you say, the rest is history. We are very much embedded now within the university. It's not just from the perspective of infrastructure within civil engineering, but as you pointed out earlier, that I'm now co-directing the Institute for Security, Science and Technology. This really comes from my desire for what I call societal resilience. And I really would like people to look at, you know, everything societally and to realize that society does not behave in silo.
That's right. Yeah.
Society is always collaborative. It's always very tightly linked. And so this idea that, you know, people are working in silos, behaving in silos and so on is very counter the way society works. And to me, it's effectively common sense. And it's becoming even more absent. And one of my jobs, as I see in life, is to bring common sense back.
Okay.
And basically what I ask my colleagues is, when you do things, do it as society behaves. So I always give the example, look, if you are in transport, you know, you need energy, obviously, for your vehicle, you need communication and so on. There is no time when the transport infrastructure operates on its own to deliver anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all have to be integrated and so on. And the same goes for humanity. There's a reason why, if you believe in God, God created us differently. And if you look at it, it's fairly synergistic. It's fairly complementary. And so what that tells you is that there's a reason for difference. And that reason is a positive one. It's not a negative one, as some of us treat it today.
Yeah. I do like that underlying theme of integration, recognizing that we are different, but we're different for there's a reason for our difference. Yeah. And there's benefit to be gained from accepting the differences. And it almost goes back to, well, it does go back to a point which you made earlier with regards to the difference between tribalism, whereby it was a competition for resources. It wasn't a competition to say that I'm superior and you're inferior. And I think sometimes some of the things which are done when it's not in an integrated fashion is done based on the fact of, I want to gain this so that I can do something which you can't do, and I don't want you to have access to.
Yes.
And that doesn't work well for societies.
Yeah.
About your time here at Imperial, because how long have you been at Imperial?
Too
When
long.
did you?
It's 22 years plus.
22 years plus. That's a good time that you've been here.
And by the way, I've gone through every single step. So I came in as a very young lecturer.
Right.
I went through to senior lecturer. I became a reader, eventually a full professor. That was in 2007. So
2007.
if you're looking for a Black person, let's say, who has actually gone through every single step, then I am it. And I'm very, very happy to share my experiences in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one thing I wanted to say is that in general, um, human beings, let's say born in a country or those who come here,
Mm-hmm.
each one of them has a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting because if we don't do things properly, we spend a lot of money rectifying it. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So whether people become, wayward or they become whatever, societal misfits and so on, there is a cost associated with trying to deal with it and
Yeah.
rectify it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would it not be better if each of those individuals was given the opportunity and the support for them to contribute positively?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, every single person is a potential benefit to the society. And so I really don't get it, when there are no opportunities given, particularly in terms of young people. I mean, the solution to all of the problems that we may have is in empowering the young people, enabling them to thrive, opportunities and so on, because that alleviates all of the problems that we may be seeing in some bits of society today. I'm trying to understand why we don't go for a win-win, which is actually good for the people, good for society. But we're preferring to take the hard road where we don't provide the chances, we don't provide the opportunities as required. And then somehow we now have to deal with the significant costs associated with it. It really countered that common sense I was talking about.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder about this idea of common sense, because sometimes common sense doesn't seem to be too common. The
Yeah, so
solution.
I give lectures now on the uncommon common sense, and also how to use difference to make a difference. I mean,
Yeah.
these are very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love that idea about the win-win and also the cost of rectification. If you don't put in the investment early, it then it's that old saying, a stitch in time saves nine. You put that one stitch in, it will prevent the thing becoming much worse, and then you having to put several steps in to correct it.
Yeah.
That's I really like that kind of approach, really do. I'm just going to go back to something. A lot of what you've said resonates with this idea about teaching, about inspiring, about empowering young people. It sounds to me like you've got a burning passion for young people, right? Could you give, how would you say here at Imperial College, how could we make that even more visible, would you say? As you said, you've been through every stage from a researcher to a lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, full professor. And I just want to make a point on this. I believe you were the first Black professor at Imperial College. Am I right to say that?
And for a while after that.
And for a while. So not only were you the first, you were the only. Yeah. So that is to be congratulated in itself. And I think that's wonderful. Yeah. But for somebody now coming in, if you were starting again, what advice to make it a bit more collegiate, a bit more to help the youngsters coming through? What would you say to them? Or what advice would you give?
There is from I mean, I used to be a part of the admissions team in civil engineering for a while, and also obviously sitting in recruitment interviews and also promotion interviews and so on. So I've actually participated at all of those levels. There's an issue, particularly with students, let's say, I would say Black British students. I think there's an issue of perception also, because the image of a university and how it is perceived, particularly in some of the inner cities and deprived areas, is quite important. And so some of the work that when the college realized that really, for people like us, let's say in civil engineering, it wasn't that we were getting applications and somehow discriminating. It was just that we were not getting the applications.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we made comments on that, and the university came up with some initiatives to go into schools. And I did participate with colleagues, including Sunday Popola, was doing a marvelous job, as we all know. And Professor Sir Peter Knight and people like that, we invited students from some of the inner cities to come here. And we were showing them, things that you can do from space, and how you pilot airplanes and all of this infrastructure that we build. The thing that you immediately realize is that there is an issue of perception. Okay? Right. When they see you and they see that actually I could be here, I could come here. So there is an issue there, perception. Okay. And we need to address that. And I think the college has done some work in that direction. We could do more. And the other relevant point here is that I think the visibility of the representation of the population that a university serves is quite critical. Because my theory also here is very simple, which is that in the world of statistics, if I say that I'm a global university, then the suggestion there is that you're representative of the color creed of the global population. Yeah. And I think it would be advisable to reflect that at every level of the college's activity, so that a young Black kid looking at the university, seeing a Black president, what would they think? They would think, well, I could be that one day.
That's right. Yeah.
So there is perception, which is partly potentially driven by a lack of representativity. And then there's the big issue of representativity, which is very much linked to the EDI policy, Black Lives Matter, all of these things that are coming through. And I think there's a positive point here, which is that the university is ramping up. The college is actually now ramping up its activities in that direction. And I am participating, like with you, Wayne, in some of the initiatives, the groups, and so on. Yeah. And I'm quite concerned that they don't become just another exercise, that we actually end up making a step change in the way that the society, as I said, argued earlier, it should be. I mean, if you look at the student body, I think most people would agree that, at least in terms of the various traits and attributes that we consider, that you would say that it is kind of representative of the global population. Now, if you delve a little deeper, you may find that there are some gaps still to be filled by, let's say, Black British students. Accept that. But you will find that hierarchically it becomes less so. So I'm really just calling for fair game. I'm calling for statistics to play. After all, we are a world-leading research institution. So let's use our statistics and just say, look, what is our population? And do we represent that at the student level, staff level, leadership level, governance level? And I think if we do that, you will see a massive, massive change overnight.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I really do. I do like the idea about, let's say what it says, what it is on the tin. So if we're a global university, let's represent that it's a global university. Let's have proper representation. And it's not just at the level of the student body, it's across the entire university.
Yeah, so because, I mean, what does it say? If a young man is looking at us and says, well, I could go there as a student because I see people who look like me, but I think there are one or two Black professors. Okay, so probability is near zero, basically. I think the message is ever so powerful, but in completely the wrong direction.
That's right. That's right. So it's about winning over hearts and minds, the hearts and minds of young, aspiring, talented individuals to say, actually, I could see myself in that position. I can see the role models there, and I can aspire to be in that position.
Yeah, but I'm also calling for introspection. You know, I think that we would also do well to look back at ourselves. So a little bit of introspection, just to ensure, just to confirm that there isn't anything that we need to do to make things happen. Sometimes when you are, you know, under, right, when you're being hard done by, there is always that side of it that sometimes we overlook. So yeah, I do also call for a little bit of introspection, just to see where we might have gone wrong ourselves.
No, I think that's really wise advice in terms of reflectivity. So we reflect on ourselves, introspect on what we've done, but also that goes two ways. The universities and institutes also must do that same process and see whether or not there has been an imbalance, and if there is, how can that imbalance be addressed and changed? Yeah. I could carry on, you know, whenever we talk, we always seem to talk for a long time, but I can see that we've got a number of questions which are in the chat. So I'm going to ask a couple people if they would like to ask their question. I can see Sunday, if you would like to ask your question, that would be absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I was looking forward to this session for about 6 weeks since I introduced Washington today. Right, amazing presentation, amazing life. I could see a reflection of that in me. If I have to tell my story of how I grew up and all that, which is good. And I really, really like that. For your mother to say, you're not just gonna be going in it, you're actually gonna make that aircraft. Seriously, nothing else can inspire anybody than that. But quite a few things. You mentioned tribalism and all this issue that goes on in our country, especially in Kenya for you. What are you doing to improve this transport system, which is chaos, the education system, which is not as good as what it was when you were studying there, and this tribalism that you spoke about? What are you doing, or what can you do to make a change in there? I have 3 questions for you, okay? The second one, this is the beach. Actually, I leave that one to the last. The second one now, you always travel to China. What are you giving the Chinese people that you can't give the African people? Why aren't you always going to Kenya, Nigeria, Singapore, any African country? Yeah, I know we're planning to take you to Nigeria, but I'm sure you're exactly afraid to come to Nigeria in case you're going to be kidnapped. Yeah? And the final question, this, I've discussed this with you so many times. In the days when Imperial College, Imperial's one was starting, and I was at the leading edge, although now your view is different, why didn't you get involved at that stage about 15 years ago? You know, but now, if I wake up today and I have to run a session on creative design, creative picture, anything, and I knocked on Washington.
Sounders.
Sunday, your sound is gone.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Your sound.
Sorry, somebody call me.
Sound.
It will stop and respond to me and come and attend whatever I asked him to attend. So I thank you for that, but I want to know why you didn't do this at the beginning. Is that because you were ticking those boxes of lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, and now professor? What is it? You know, because I've missed that. Thank you.
Wow.
Listen, I didn't set Sunday up for this. Sorry.
Okay, so I will take Kenya and Africa first. Yeah. So I think the truth is that I have been trying over the last 5 years or so to do something back, particularly in Kenya. I have reached out. I have traveled out back there, reached out to the powers that be. But you know, going back to the issues that we talked about earlier, Wayne, which is to do with tribalism and so on, it is unfortunate that that is still very much entrenched in that, to the extent that, you know, even if you come with goodies without them having to pay for them, some of the times when your name is not right, you're sent back with your goodies. It's a very unfortunate situation. Now, the positive side of this, so I haven't, if you like, got a way in to do things from the other side. But as you know, God has it in terms of the wonders of this world. I found myself actually being appointed by the UK government to advise on UK aid to Africa. So with all my understanding of the corruption and everything else, you can imagine the kind of advice I am giving to the UK government and to the High Commissioner in Nairobi on how to spend the UK taxpayers' money in projects that really benefit people on the ground. Wow. So even though I couldn't do it from the other side, I'm actually now doing it from this side. And we do now have exemplars of very good examples of projects that are working for the people. And we devised mechanisms now where we have stationed individuals in Nairobi, for example, but those individuals are being effectively managed from here. So we are bypassing the corrupt system, and thereby obviously now reaping the rewards. I mean, the right people, the people in the villages are reaping the rewards of what the British taxpayer would like them to be, to at least to the kind of help that we would like them to receive. So I think the answer to the first question, Sunday, is that, and you will be aware that it's not always easy, even in those particular situations, as I say, where they don't have to pay for anything, mainly because of this entrenched tribalism. I hope it changes in the future, but yeah, as fate has it, we found another way, which I think is much more effective, and we are now implementing that. And because the advice is I'm giving to the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, following the merger between the DFID and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, that now covers, all of the landscape or the footprint of British aid. And that includes Nigeria. As for kidnapping, no, the only person who can kidnap me in Nigeria is Sunday, I think. and he is over here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Niger, as they say. And also looking forward to being invited by Sunday to act in those movies. Now, if you haven't seen Sunday as one of the coming actors, yeah, he's a great one. I've seen him in a proper movie recently.
We'll have to get the link to that one. Sunday,
Sunday should publish a link so you can see it. A man of a million facets. It's incredible. Okay, as for China, yeah, I think there's a relationship between China and what we just discussed, which is that they are very thirsty for knowledge. They're very thirsty for development. And so they have provided a platform for me to be able to actualize some of the ideas that I have done in research and so on. Now, it's very strange because I do go to China to train them in certain aspects, and then they take the training to Kenya to basically use it in not very good ways. But yeah, it's a difficult, vexed problem in that particular respect. Now, why did I not do this 15 years ago? Sunday is right. When you get to Imperial, it's a very, very, very I'm trying to look for the right adjective, competitive environment and so on. And so I think it was clear, given the area that I was coming into, and as I said earlier, it was a surveying, mapping position, trying to get that into a position that eventually punches its weight from the perspective of research internationally, meant that I had to reinvent myself a little bit. And so I decided to go squarely into space, because I thought if I did that, I would not be caught. And they didn't catch me. So that was a good decision. So you say ticking the boxes. I think the honest truth is yes. But it's never too late. And therefore, I'm here today. We've talked about contribution through teaching, contribution through philanthropy. We are now talking about real contributions through, let's say, the advice to government and so on. And I'm hoping that the global footprint obviously develops beyond just the areas we are working in today.
I think that's
Thank you very much. I mean, just to say something very quickly before the next question, Washington has been very instrumental to me during this lockdown, because he introduced me to a group of young guys in Turkey, beginning of the year before we had the lockdown. And because of them, we were able to run our Creative Future online for 12 weeks.
fantastic.
And it affected children all over the world. Over 5,000 students were able to tune in within that 12 weeks. So thank you, Washington.
You're welcome, Sandy. Most welcome.
Yeah. That's
and now I won't get kidnapped because I got the brownie points.
No, it's a very, very, very interesting journey. That's the whole thing. We're all on a journey, and actually understanding the journey which you've gone through and the decisions that you've made is actually inspiring for the rest of us, right? That sometimes you have to do, sometimes there are actions which you have to do in order for you to make that necessary step forward. Had you not...
there's a level of positive arrogance. There's a level of self-belief. You know, there's that I'm not suggesting this is something that is prevalent, but I would have to say that you know, in going to Europe to basically represent the UK in those days when we had 12 countries, and each country sent one engineer to basically start from scratch developing these European systems. I mean, I was already standing out, you know, if you're worried about color, for example.
Yeah.
In the sense that you've got, you know, 11 white other engineers who obviously identify with so-called mother country, you know, coming from Spain and so on. And I think, to be honest, apart from the know-how, the knowledge which I thought I had, I also had to be quite strong, you know, in terms of self-belief and so on. And also try to basically learn how to disarm people, if you know what I mean. So, so how do you break in? You know, how do you break the ice? How do you get them eating from your lap? That kind of thing. You know. So there's a lot of profiling that goes on. I don't have any psychological training, but one of my instruments of dealing with people is to try to profile them in a positive way. And then to react and respond to them according to that, so that I don't have a one-size-fits-all model. So, for example, when I was in Toulouse, looking at the situation then, and thinking about what to do when we go for coffee and so on. So I would tell stories about the fact that, you know, back in Kenya we are at peace with lions and leopards, and you know, we in the evening, they're actually on our roofs and so on. They find that fascinating to the extent that, you know, every coffee time, they had to come and listen to the stories. So they're all running to listen to stories. I mean, I know it's a kind of trivial, but it just helps for them to coalesce around you, as opposed to being distant, recognizing the fact of difference, and then deciding that because of that, you are not one of them, you know. So there is also that side of it, which is potentially useful, and we could make our young ones aware. And I would say, for example, in my dealings with the Royal Academy of Engineering, when we ask for proposals, particularly for COVID, in terms of, you know, technology that young ones could propose, and we opened this up to the entire globe. It was very surprising that the African ideas were actually at the top. We thought they were the most innovative. And that's why I keep saying it's all about the youth. Empower the youth, empower them equally, empower them, give them, then everything is a win-win after that. And that is why I'm actually very, very much saying to politicians and people in government, which is that, don't spend hundreds of billions of pounds rectifying when you could actually gain that much amount of money into the economy by offering them the youth that sort of empowerment. Because to me, it just makes sense to do it that way.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I think that's what you've said there is so true. I like the idea about the curiosity, that when people are curious, they'll come and find out. And the stories which you were telling engendered this curiosity, and those curiosities then almost like not leveled the playing field, but helped people to recognize that this difference isn't something which
and then 3 months later, they elected me the leader of the team.
See, that's what I mean.
You know what I mean. So basically, what they have decided is that my difference would be actually a galvanizing, gluing factor. So they elected me. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You know what? I could always sit down and talk with you for hours at a time, right? But I am just weary that our time is up for this week. I think I'm going to have.
Before you go, I have one quick question. Sorry.
Didn't see your hand. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Washington, for speaking today. Always like hearing you speak. I guess my question for you is, what continues to give you hope for the future? I know you just lastly talked about working with young people and empowering them, but what continues to be your driving force? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very, very good question. And I'm going to give you an old answer, which is that to me is making the society a better place. Now, obviously in my own small way. And what I say now really, and I do get, invited to a lot of Africa-facing, or at least developing world-facing webinars and these sort of things. I always say, you've got to put those particular countries on an inclusive, sustainable path of growth. It's the good old thing about teaching people how to fish, not giving them fish.
Yeah.
And what is the underpinning pillar of that? It is the youth. And so I always say, when people ask me about challenges, I say it's about this sustainable, inclusive growth. Inclusive is very important because it is boys and girls and all the differences and so on. And then the pillar is the youth. Now, it doesn't mean we don't sort out the other age groups and so on. We do. But if you're looking at long-term sustainable development, you've got to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. It's brilliant. And Washington, again, thank you so much for your words of wisdom. It's been really, really brilliant to listen to you this afternoon. As is my usual fashion, I'm going to just advertise what we have on for next week. And anyone who wants to stay and have a little after chat, then after the advert, you can stay behind. Otherwise, you can leave. So next week, we're going to have Sarah Adansi, who's a mental health nurse specialist. And it's just to coincide with the fact that next week is World Mental Health Day. So we thought we'd get a specialist in who will be discussing those factors with us. So that would be next week, Friday. And if you have missed any of the Belonging series, it is available on YouTube. So if you go to this tiny URL, you will find all of the previous interviews that we've had. So it's just for me to say once again, thanks everybody for coming. And Washington, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. And I am here, you got my email and so on. If anybody wants to get in touch, feel free, please.
Yeah. Yes, you heard it, guys. You heard it here first, right? I know that I'm going to be using that email a lot, right? So thank you very much, Washington.
God bless. God bless.
Right.
Have a good day, all. God bless.